Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 30-minute webinar. From Lost to Located, Smarter Asset Tracking Made Simple. Two housekeeping items before we get started. The session is being recorded, and you will receive a link over the next few days by email. Secondly, please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A section, and we will be addressing those during the last few minutes. For those of you just familiar with Barcodes Inc. or maybe OCR Canada, I want to quickly introduce you to Levata. First, we continue to offer the same range of products and services you know today. Our partnership with leading manufacturers gives you unrivaled access to the best devices on the market, enhanced by service and support to keep your organization moving forward. With over 200,000 customers worldwide, including 84% of the Fortune 500 served, Levata exists to elevate your potential, integrating technology, expertise, and service to power your organization forward. To discuss how businesses are using easy-to-deploy tracking solutions to address everyday challenges, including locating trailers in outdoor yards, recovering lost mobile devices, or managing asset visibility at seasonal peak, we couldn't ask for two better speakers to explore this topic with you. Tim Tassone is a senior principal solutions architect at Levata, bringing more than 15 years of experience in the industry. Throughout his career, Tim has partnered with organizations of all sizes across key verticals, including retail, logistics and warehousing, healthcare, and manufacturing. Each day, he collaborates with customers to design and optimize system architectures that enable seamless integration of hardware and software solutions, leveraging the latest technology in mobility and automation. Pete Seltz is an industry expert with more than 25 years of experience in automotive, logistics, and asset tracking technologies. He's led initiatives with global organizations using GPS, BLE, and RFID solutions to improve visibility and efficiency across complex operations. With a background in process improvement and real-world deployment, Pete brings deep insight into how connected technology is transforming the way organizations track and manage their assets. Welcome, Tim and Pete. Please take it away, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you, Edwin. I'm really excited to be here today. I know Pete's excited to be here today as well. Let's just set things up. We'll talk through the agenda. So we'll start by looking through some of the common visibility and tracking challenges that we see across modern supply chains. Then we'll dive into some of the basics, what BLE is, how it works, why it's become such a practical tool for asset tracking in our field here. Next, we'll walk through some of the real-world use cases, both inside the four walls and out in the yard or out in the field. And from there, we'll talk about the tangible benefits, talk about some better visibility, higher efficiency, and proving out that stronger ROI. And finally, we'll wrap it up with how we approach implementation. So what it takes to start small, prove value, and scale successfully. Pete, I think we should start by just talking through some of those real-world challenges.
Sure, thanks, Tim. As Edwin mentioned, I spent many years deploying asset and yard solutions, tracking anything from trailers to containers in many different environments. And one of the things that I've found in that is many of the operations, whether you're a cross dock or a manufacturing facility, there's some typical challenges that you face, and one of the main ones is employees, and not so much that employees are bad or are trying to do anything that is not for the company, but a lot of times those company or those employees just aren't invested as much in the operation as you would want them to be. One thing that I've run across over the years is in yards. Traditionally, the over-the-road drivers are not really all that interested in making your operation better. They're interested in getting back and forth out of your facility as fast as they can so they can get back on the road. And it's not that they don't care about the operation so much as it's just not their focus. And the result of that is if they don't park in the spot that you asked them to, or they drop something off or park it at the wrong door, those delays have a ripple effect into the operation. That's just one example. Beyond that, sometimes just not having visibility to assets, like I use returnable containers as a good example. They cause some of the same types of delays and potentially even quality issues. If you don't have the correct cap, or you're forced to pack something in a different type of packaging, that causes you to either double handle because you have to repack it, or you're shipping it in the wrong container that it wasn't designed to ship it in. And the next thing you know, there's product damage, and that could impact your customer, but ultimately, it impacts your entire operation because you're forced to do double work. The irony is there are ways to automate that to give you better visibility. Sometimes it's deemed to be too costly or cumbersome to deploy, and it requires, they think it requires a lot of infrastructure. And that's just not the case as you start to look at some of the newer technologies out there. Tim, that's what I see in the outdoor. Do you see anything on the mobile capture side inside the operation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Pete. And honestly, one of the biggest challenges that we see is really that devices aren't always lost. They just move. They are mobile devices after all. So, while a handheld might start in one location, one department at the onset of the shift, it's going to end up in another location certainly by the end of the shift, if not midway through. They constantly move. Again, they're mobile devices. That's their intention. But once it moves between those zones or those shifts, we start to lose some of the accountability, which is a major issue. And really that's where some of that downtime starts to creep in. So oftentimes we see users out there really hunting for devices, hunting for their preferred scanner or their printer, really the tools they need to do their job. And the reality again is they're not necessarily lost, they're just misplaced. And oftentimes when that's the case, they're left uncharged. So when they're found, you've got an asset that, what are you going to do with it? So even when those devices are found, again, those batteries may be dead. Maybe we're missing updates. Maybe there was a lapse in a configuration change that would have happened as a result of the device being offline. Those types of shared device environments make things tough sometimes because devices constantly move between those workers and the work areas throughout the day. Again, they're mobile devices, but it's not just handhelds. We see the same pain points really with mobile printers, wearables, two-way radios, all those types of accessories. Again, they're mobile. They move around the warehouse, they move around the work facility, and they go missing. And they all add up to lost productivity. So really what we're looking at is wasted effort, get frustration amongst users out there. And that's exactly where some of these BLE tracking solutions can come into play and help us out here. It gives us the real visibility into where those assets actually are, and we can do so without actually adding additional workflows to the team, basically. So let's maybe talk through some of the architecture of this solution here. I think that's really a good place to dig in on the technology here. So if we take a look at the diagram, it really highlights how simple this solution is. On the left side, we start with our assets in motion. Think of trailers, forklifts, handhelds, carts, two-way radios, anything, any type of asset that we're looking to track here. Each one carries a small each one carries a small BLE or a GPS-enabled tag, all backhauled through BLE, and that tag effectively quietly broadcasts a signal. Basically, information like identity, I'm a tag, here I am, some general location information if we're leveraging GPS, temperature information, really nothing too complicated, just basic information that the tag is using its own utilities to pull this data. There's a few different tag types to support different needs. So some are for BLE indoor only tracking. Others might be a fixed GPS tracking for outdoor or mixed environments. And with that, we've got various battery options. We find that some of the battery life might vary depending on the configuration, the tag type, the environment that it's being used in. And overall, really the goal is to try to get a good 5-year battery life out of one of these. And that's typically how all these tags are rated. So for extended life applications, we can certainly go beyond that. And we do have some options out there, but certain things like a solar assisted tag, for example, we can really notch that 5-year lifespan up to something like 7 years or even longer potentially. But taking it all back to the architecture here, all those signals are really picked up by a nearby device. And that's really the beauty of the beauty of the solution here. The mobile device itself acts as our network. We don't need special readers. We don't need any expensive hardware or infrastructure. just the existing mobile computers, maybe tablets, access points, or even some of the workstations we might have out on the floor, they can all act as gateways. And when they're acting as a gateway, they're effectively detecting these tags, detecting these trackers as these trackers move through the environment. So when a mobile computer detects a BLE tag that doesn't include GPS data, which again, that's pretty common in an indoor scenario, that's just fine. The agent itself that runs on these mobile computers basically uses the device-specific GPS coordinates to really approximate the tag's location. So what that translates to is your workforce becomes part of a sensing network. Every handheld in use is really now a moving environmental sensor. We're creating a nice, huge crowdsourced network for this type of data. So from here, again, back to the diagram, from here, all that collected data, think of that location or proximity data, maybe some temperature or some of those types of sensor readings. It all flows securely back through that Luna routing service. And within that service, we're managing the encryption, the authentication, and basically routing it back through a zero trust framework. As that data is flowing, basically the next step is to present it. And that's really where the solution comes to life. So we have a dashboard that aggregates all this reported asset data, including those coordinates, those zones, the temperature readings, overall location history, and it displays it really in a nice, clean map-based interface. So really easy for users to grasp. From here, we can zoom in by site, we can filter by the tag type, the asset type, or search for an individual asset out there, an individual tag if we wanted to. So the portal really acts as a simple operational administrative layer for us, gives teams the ability to instantly have visibility to those assets without any complex integrations. But for a lot of customers out there, that standalone view may not be enough. And that's where we can take it a step further. So effectively, what we can do is integrate the same type of information directly into the customer system. Maybe that's a WMS, maybe that's an ERP system, or just a general asset management platform. In this sense, users can effectively work within their own dashboard using the tools they're already familiar with and benefit really from this BLE-driven visibility behind the scenes. So if you think about it, whether it's our dashboard or whether it's integrated directly into your own native systems, the result is the same. We're presenting real-time actionable insights, real-time actionable visibility across all those assets throughout your operation. So again, the idea here is we're delivering simple, secure information and the solution that's built to last. So that's a quick look at how the architecture comes together. It's a lightweight, secure solution. It's incredibly easy to deploy. Pete, I think we should shift over to really how this platform is being leveraged in outdoor environments. Thinking of scenarios like yards or trailer operations here.
Excellent. Yeah. As I had mentioned earlier, not having visibility to the trailers and yards has a ripple effect on the operation. And I just wanted to take a second. I'll go a little deeper into what I mean by that. In many yards, the trailer location is verified through manual checks or audits, informal yard walks. And it basically means somebody's got to go out there, whether it's with just a pen and paper and put it into a spreadsheet, or they're going out with a tablet that may be connected to a yard. That it does work, but it's very time consuming and it is easy for errors to kind of creep in. When a trailer is not where it's supposed to be, delay just doesn't affect one task, meaning I don't just have to send somebody out there to go look, and by the time they actually record it, the data may already be old. But if the dock door or that spot is being held up because they can't find the trailer, that means that it stops other workflows. And whether it's in the inside of the operation or the outbound loads that are people are waiting for an outbound load that was scheduled, that impacts everything. And this really gets exacerbated during peak seasons, meaning if you don't have that under control when you go into peak seasons where you're doing a lot of movement, that really can impact them. And to kind of counteract that, many companies have gone in and done like a software only yard solution. Those are only as good as the data that's being inputted, and that the over the road driver does what they're supposed to do, and that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, which again, if they're not invested in your operation, they may not do. And so that basically Plus, those systems are not always good at doing temporary yards. So during peak seasons, those yards, it's hard for them to the yard system to incorporate a leased yard for, let's say you had to lease it for a couple of weeks. All of that basically is happening when you need your yard to run the most optimal. And it's proving helpful for a lot of operations. And you kind of mentioned the GPS format is a self-locating tag. And I know people that might have looked at those in the past may say, well, those are expensive. And most of the time, when you're looking at those, it's because LTE is the backhaul. So you have to have an individual data plan for all that. And that's kind of where this solution really helps is if you use a long range BLE, you can kind of keep all that centralized and not have all those extra expenses. So it really makes it affordable. But by giving a voice to that trailer, it removes manual audits that are caused by the parking errors, and it helps the operation all flow within the yard. And it's just better awareness. And the staff, when staff changes over or you have a lot of changeover, it makes a consistent process for making sure your yard is as you expect it. And that's on the outdoor side. But Tim, have you seen applications on the indoor side where this could be used?
Yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost here, I think we have to acknowledge that we really do see some similar challenges indoors. And bottom line, users don't always follow the established process. That's pretty universal, regardless of the environment. But when we look at those indoor use cases, the focus is really on tracking assets on the move. Again, mobile assets, mobile computers, handhelds, things of that nature. But think of carts, think of containers, think of shelving units, or just again those high value tools that they don't always stay put for long, and we need to have better tabs on those types of devices. So BLE can really help with that. In fact, we can leverage BLE to locate those assets instantly, not necessarily in a single warehouse, but think about across multiple campuses, or even think about a warehouse within a warehouse. So meta concept there, but it exists in real life. Really, when we deploy a BLE solution in those scenarios, what we do is we alleviate the pain associated with things like hoarding of carts or some of that specialized gear because one team can't find them. Everyone can effectively see all those assets in real time. And when I think about hoarding of certain types of assets, I know I see it all the time on the mobile computer front. Certain users have their preferred mobile computer. It just works best for them, better than any other mobile computer in the fleet. So we can try to eliminate that. The bottom line, though, is it really drives that better utilization. So instead of buying more equipment to compensate things that are missing, you're basically able to leverage what you've already purchased more effectively. So big benefits in that sense here. But in addition to that, a few other things I think we could probably talk about here. Basically, the concept of taking a BLE tag and attaching it to a handheld, great concept here. It's certainly something we can do. The idea is, again, the teams can quickly locate those particular devices and eliminate those device hunts. But there's really another powerful piece to this, and I kind of alluded to this in the architecture discussion as well. But the mobile computers themselves can really act as a tracker in themselves, so they can really participate in this type of BLE network. And basically, what we do is really using a lightweight agent. We install this agent on a handheld, and now we've basically enabled this handheld to act as a tracker, but also as a gateway. And when we do this particular agent is going to be able to collect BLE signals from those nearby trackers, and again, act as a tracker itself. So the idea is the handheld is seeing assets in the field, but it's also reporting, hey, I'm an asset. I'm in this particular location. Really helpful information. And what we see then is in many warehouses, when we run this agent, we can actually run it in the scenario where users don't have to interact with it. It's a common request. We deploy any application to an end user out there. We really want to try to streamline the access as much as possible. And in some cases, if it's a diagnostic tool, maybe we want that tool on the device, but we don't necessarily want the user to interact with it. And that's exactly what we can do with this gateway application. We basically put it into no interaction mode. That's exactly what it's called. And in this mode, just as I stated, the user can't necessarily interact directly with the tags or trigger, say, a remote ping to a tag or a remote ping to another device. The agent just silently runs on the device, automatically gathers that BLE data and all of the information around it. So really, this does two things for us. One, again, it locks down that device user experience, so the user is really focused primarily on their core application and their core workflows. But second, it turns that device into a crowdsourced sensor. In fact, when you've got it on multiple devices at that point, it's not just a single sensor. We're talking about an entire network of sensors out there. So every person walking the floor is now contributing live data, basically, to those tagged assets without changing anything about how they work. It's a really simple, elegant way to expand visibility without actually adding any extra hardware or manual effort. I think next year, let's try to transition. Let's take a look at some of the benefits and business impacts of this type of solution, Pete.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, we talk about giving a digital voice and what that to an asset, and the physical asset, now that it has the digital voice, basically becomes kind of automated visibility in this situation. And that really helps in real world, the real world situations that we've been talking about. But let's take a step back and figure out the impact that tends to happen when you do this. So a process that becomes repeatable with automation really does give you over 90% reduction in those human errors at a minute. And that ensures that that you can expect it's where you said it was going to be. And often with that level of visibility, it kind of translates into a 15 to 20% boost in productivity, just by simply eliminating the time and the time spent searching for that equipment or that asset. Those efficiency gains can also drive cost reductions throughout there. And I use, one of them I'll use as an example is just in a yard. If I don't have a switcher driving around looking for a trailer, that's one time spent that he's not, driving around without doing the job. Second piece of it is the fuel consumption of driving around looking for that, and that can be whether that's a switch cab or a fork truck. I mean, those are real dollars that happen today. It's not necessarily about working harder. It's just about removing unnecessary steps. And that asset optimization is an area that where the visibility pays off the most, and it's frequently overlooked as a savings. By increasing that efficiency, you may need fewer assets, or the labor hours may be less. And I mean, those are all not taken necessarily into account when you're looking at those inefficient tasks. And I think the real takeaway here is that visibility drives predictability. And when your team can predict where things are and where they're moving, that's when the efficiency, the cost savings, and really the flexibility starts to align. And I know, as we look through this is a great thing, but I'd also say, how hard is it? A lot of people ask me, how hard is it to actually go out and deploy? This sounds great. I got the productivity. I can see it. I want to be able to do this, but what does it really take to deploy? And Tim, I don't know if you can give some visibility to that.
Yeah, and actually, even just finishing off some of that point around the ROI, I mean, I think you really nailed it. And part of what drives that ROI is really the low barrier to entry. We don't need to have a massive IT project or all new infrastructure, a whole entire overhaul of our infrastructure, rather, to start seeing those types of results. The impact is really strong, especially on the mobility side, as I think about things like recovering lost handhelds or improving some of the device utilization. Ultimately, we're trying to reduce time, which translates really back into those labor savings, which again just boosts our ROI. So really, the fastest way to experience this is really through our phase 1 hands-on demo, which I'll talk through here. And what we try to do is replicate your real-world use case in really ideally just a few hours. Not talking about days, not talking about weeks, not talking about months. The goal is really to make it easy. Think about fast, low effort, low risk. And the first step is discovery. So what we do is we like to take the time to try to understand your environment. We want to look at the assets that we're talking about tracking. We want to understand what the visibility challenges that you have and what we're trying to solve here. Obviously, it's a good logical place to start. But this really helps us identify some of the right tags. It helps us identify an appropriate coverage model or outline some of those data requirements that are specific to your use case. But from there, we can easily move into a simple demo, really just think of a short hands-on phase where we can see that technology in action. And typically what we do is we'll provide the tags for the environment. Again, that's where that environmental discovery comes into play. We'll carve out the demo instance, so you'll have a dedicated instance of the Luna console itself. And then we walk you through that setup and the use case processes. It's really pretty simple. And as far as an end user is concerned, it's as simple as download the app and go. We can run this on our existing rugged mobile computers, which we know everybody deploys those in their environments, or even a personal cell phone. We know that everybody carries at least one of those on on their person. So really, there's no new hardware, no new IT project required. But from there, we've got additional phases. So once we've got this concept validated, we can move into kind of a pilot or a phase 2 here, basically. But this is typically focused on really 1 or 2 facilities and trying to identify just specific workflows. And this is really where we start to see some of that data flow, visualize the movement, validate the coverage in your space, and try to optimize things accordingly. From here, oftentimes we start to move into integration conversations. So think about feeding some of this live BLE data back into your existing systems, WMS, an asset tracking system, ERP, or a BI platform, for example. Really trying to design this process to be as turnkey and as scalable as possible for users out there. So just think a quick setup, minimal overhead. And again, our goal here is measurable results in weeks. Again, I want to go back to this takes us hours to stand up, not days, not weeks, not months. So it's really a simple, practical way for us to, to move from interest to, we'll say, impact and see how BLE visibility can transform those operations. Really quick turn. I think it's important here we talk about how to engage, Edwin.
Hey, thanks so much, Pete and Tim. Absolutely wonderful presentation. Thanks for doing it. I'm sure the audience agrees with me. Now, if you'd like to explore how this tracking technology can be used in your environment to deliver fast value and better operational control, please contact us. You will see the numbers and the emails on the screen, also a code to take a picture of, and you'll be right to us. Let's turn to a couple of questions in the few minutes we've left. First of all, maybe Tim, so do any of these tags have the ability to store temperature data? And how much data can these tags store, if you think about it?
Yeah, good question. And bottom line, we've got a lot of different types of tags for different use cases. And we're talking about unidirectional, one direction communication versus bidirectional communication. But in this case here, if we're talking about things like temperature tracking, absolutely, those types of trackers do exist, and we do commonly deploy them. The amount of data we can store really, ultimately, it's going to depend on what the user's preference is, but really the default approach to this is to try to pull temperature information about every 10 minutes. So as a tag is in its environment, it can silently just pull that temperature data and store it. And again, the frequency in which we pull this information is really going to dictate how much of it we can save. But if we're pulling it every 10 minutes by design, we can hold about 3,000 readings worth of data. And if you do the math on that, that's about 20 days of on-tag storage. So if we cut that reading time in half, obviously the number of readings are going to increase, and we're going to see a little shorter lifespan there. But if we look at, say, readings, say, every 30 minutes or so, obviously then we can extend that period out to simple math here, 30 days roughly, right? So, excuse me, 2 times 3, 60 days. So quite a bit of data can be held in this.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, do they need to actually do anything to get the data off of the tag, or is it?
Oh, yeah.
Simple?
Yeah, good question. It's simple. It's simple in that these users that are interacting with these tags are typically doing so through a mobile computer. So really, is anytime one of these tags comes into proximity of a gateway. So again, think of a mobile computer running the agent, or maybe a fixed mount gateway that we have. It's going to upload all that data into the through the gateway up into our cloud host portal, basically. Automatic, no user interaction required.
Nice. Hey, Pete, I'll send one last one your way. Can you implement role-based permissions with end users not having full functionality?
Absolutely. This is designed to really run in the background if is to give as much or as little to the end user as possible. So if you're using a mobile device, you can actually create what's called no interaction or limited interaction mode, and it basically has the application running in the background. So if you have users that are scanning and doing other things on their mobile computer, they won't need to interact with this at all, and they can still be part of that, the crowdsourcing and backhaul uh, as just doing their normal job.
Great. Well, with that, we have reached the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, Tim, Pete. Great insights. Appreciate you sharing those. Thanks very much to the audience for joining us today, and hope to see you at the next webinar.